marched into a different direction. They lined us up and stripped us naked. They took all of our clothing and belongings we had with us. They shaved our heads, humiliated us, thoroughly frisked us, even between our legs, and tattooed us. This is my tattoo. Still have it on. I was scared, and I asked my older brother, Zachariah, to go first. Zachariah's number is 7630, and mine is 7631. The next morning, they selected about 200 of us, ordered to march to a camp, Yavishovis, which was a coal mining factory. I worked there until January 1945. While we were there, every day we worked from 8 to 6 p.m. Our daily food ration was a slice of bread with margarine and a tea made of straw, and leftovers from the cafeteria that fed the Polish workers for lunch and for dinner. Sometimes we got a bowl of soup with beets or cabbage or bits of potatoes. We worked inside a coal mine. My job was to remove white stones from the coal as it came down the conveyor belt. I had to pick it out and throw it into the conveyor belt. I worked alongside my brother Zachariah. The daily conditions were often frightening and life-threatening. We walked to the job with SS guarding us. Often we were kicked and beaten with rifles for no reason at all. I witnessed many beatings and even hanging for those who tried to escape or who were having difficulties to keep up. In January 1945, they told us to get ready for a march because the Russian front was coming closer. We marched for a day and a night without stopping. We did not dare get out of line, even to relieve ourselves, because either the German shepherd dogs would tear us apart or the SS would just shoot us. We marched until we came to a field close to the train station. There they told us to lay down in the snow. I was very frightened because I thought they were going to shoot us. But we stayed there until an open cattle car train arrived, and they told us and loaded us up about 100 people per boxcar. There was at least 1 foot of snow in the boxcar. We were squashed together with no place to move. We had no food or water on the train, so we ate the snow. One day later, we arrived in Buchenwald. My best friend Josip Roth died during the train. Only about half of us made it off the train. In Buchenwald, I was put in a Jugendblock where about 400 boys, 12 to 20, were housed. One of those boys in the Jugendblock was the famous author Elie Wiesel. Our job there was to carry rocks from the quarry. Every day a group of Jewish prisoners were called by their number. Together they were forced to march out of the camp to dig ditches. After they dug the ditches, they were lined up along the ditches and shot so they would fall into their fresh dug ditch. On April 10, 1945, our block elster told us that we were to be selected the next day to march out of the camp to dig ditches. He said to us that after our number were called and we were standing in the assembly lines preparing to march out of the camp, the Nazi officer were going to ask us what we are, what nationality we are. He said that we should respond stating our nationality, saying that we are Hungarians, Czechoslovakian, Polish, Russians, Romanian. Say that we are do not say that we are Jews. So the next morning we were assembled as usual for a head count. The Nazi officer told us, "Juden heraustreten." Jews, get out of line. Step forward. And nobody moved. He got very mad with us and said, "Was ist denn los? Verstehen die nicht Deutsch? What's wrong with you? Don't you understand German?" The Blockhälster said to the Nazi officers, "These sind Poles, Russians, Hungarians, Romanians." Then the Nazi officer pointed to a young, frightened Jewish boy from Warsaw and said, "Bist du Jude? Are you a Jew?" The boy said, shaking and frightened, and replied, "Ja, ja." The Nazi officer said, "So sag deine Kameraden, dass sie heraustreten. Tell your friends to step out of the line." The boy said in Yiddish, "Jindler kimt heraus." Young boys step out of line, and nobody moved. He was shaking and crying. At that exact moment, the Fliegeralarm, the sirens started blowing overhead, were blasting. We saw the American planes overhead, and we all ran as fast as we could get back into the barracks. This Blockhälster, who saved our lives, was a Christian political prisoner. His name was Kalina, and he has been honored and recognized as a hero at the Holocaust Memorial Yad Vashem in Israel. April 11, 1945, at about 10 a.m., that was the day we were liberated. At about noon, the American tanks rolled into our camp. That was the happiest day of my life. The prisoners were screaming and crying and carrying the American soldier on their shoulder throughout the camp. Some of the cruel SS guards were captured by the Russian prisoners and killed until the American army intervened. They said that the Nazis were prisoners of war and we would all have to abide by the Geneva Conventions. I'm forever grateful for the American Army and the great nation of ours, United States of America. After we were liberated, the American Army brought in the people from Weimar to see firsthand what was happening in the concentration camps in Buchenwald. The people of Weimar saw the survivors, the conditions of the camp, and the method of torture used against the prisoners. One of the many unspeakable things that they saw was the lampshades that were made of prisoners' skin who had tattoos. Her name was Elsa Koch, who was the Lagerführer's wife, had prisoners killed and skinned for the lampshade and pictures. The people of Weimar said they did not know what went on in the camp of Buchenwald, but they lived only a mile away from the fence. My brother Zachariah and I returned to our hometown after we were liberated. We found our homes looted and destroyed. We thought we were the only survivors from our family. So we relocated ourselves to Prague. One day, when Zachariah and I were walking down the street, I saw a man in a soldier uniform walking towards us on the same sidewalk. It was our brother Moshe, you could only imagine the overwhelming joy we all experienced from this reunion. I arrived in the United States in 1948 with my sister and Rivka and my brother Froyam. We were sent over to the United States before the World War II. About a year and a half after being in America, I was drafted in the American Army and served in the Korean War. I was in the Korean War in the 8228 MASH hospital that was about 20 miles from the front lines. For about a year, even though I had just come from concentration camp and was still having nightmares, I was proud to serve this great country in the United States Army. In 1957, I married my wife, Pearl Davis, and thank God we have 6 children and 6 grandchildren. I went into a business with my brother Zachariah, known as Dad. We had owned and operated a cabinet shop known as the East Woodworking Company in Little Italy of Cleveland. There we are making custom cabinets. There are a few points that I would like to make for you before I finish. Why do I feel it is important to share my misfortune and the tragedies that occurred during World War II? There are 3 main reasons. The first reason, since my liberation, I thought this could never happen again to any other people. Unfortunately, it seems that some nations still do not have a true respect for humanity. Therefore, I feel the more we educate humanity that are willing to listen, the more we can all together prevent these tragedies from ever happening again in our future and in our children's future. So save a soul is to save the world. The second reason, there are people today that say that Holocaust never happened. They're revisionists who try to rewrite history. I feel it's important as a survivor of the Holocaust and the concentration camps to tell people that it is true, so it will never happen again to anyone on this earth. The third reason, even in the midst of all the tragedies and suffering, there were human beings who risked their lives to help other fellow human beings. A few in particular were where the Polish workers were working with us. They risked their lives to share food with me and some of the other prisoners. Another kindness of humanity that I would like to share is it pertains to my brother Moshe, who I mentioned earlier. He was told to report to work camp in January of 1944. We all later learned that he too was in concentration camp, and somehow he escaped and found his way to a German family farm. This family, at great risk of death to themselves, hid my brother in a chicken coop until the end of the war, and he too survived. He repaid their kindness by continuing to send money and support to them. for many years. Many people ask me about God. How did I feel about God when I was in concentration camp? They ask me, do I still believe in God? They ask me why God let this happen. Well, I was in concentration camp. I personally questioned, where was God? How could he let this happen to innocent men, women, and children? There were times when I was disillusioned and even angry. But it was my belief in God that helped me to survive. I thought about my prayers. On Rosh Hashanah we say, Hashem Yibloch, Hashem Mulach, Hashem Melech, which means God is, God was, and God will be there forever. I later thought about my feelings, about my belief in God's relationship to this tragedy, and I came to a realization. God is good, but God created mankind and gave them free will. Man can choose to do good or choose to do evil. If man does good, they will be rewarded. If man does evil, they will have to face their Maker for what they have done. It was people, not God, that did this horrible atrocity. Throughout my true belief in God, my teachings and my practice of my religion has always guided my thoughts in action. In my mind, there is only one God and only one creator of the universe. He doesn't care what religion you are or what holiday you keep or celebrate, as long as you are reaching out to him. In Judaism, we teach that it is our duty to fix this world and to act like God would act. We should treat others the way we want to be treated. We should respect all people. We should love each other. While we want to be close to God, I truly believe that there is no one path to be near him. Everybody reaches to God by moving along their own path, as long as you are walking towards him and not away from him. You are on the right path. You may be wondering, why didn't you fight when the Nazis came for you? Many times have I asked this question. At the time, my brother and I pleaded with my mother that we should stay in our house and refuse to go, and maybe fight the Nazis when they came back to our house. She said no, and that we were going to try to cooperate, and know that we would have been killed if we would have tried to fight. Why didn't the Jewish people fight? In 1944, Jewish people didn't have a country of their own. There was no Israel. As the Holocaust started, we were misled. We were told that we would be resettled on farms. Then they separated the men from the families. By the time we were taken to the ghetto, well, it was too late. We did not have guns or food or shelter. The Nazis had the guns and the German Shepherd dogs, which they were trained to kill. You might say, but I would fight and do whatever it takes to keep them from taking my family. Maybe so, but let me give you an example. In World War II, the Japanese won the Battle of Bataan and Corregidor Peninsula and took almost 78 American, Chinese, and Philippine soldiers prisoners. The Japanese marched the prisoners 65 miles without stopping for food, water, rest, or bodily functions. More than 11,000 of those Marines died